She took the staging for a bad robbery. Oh boy! All right, we should have had this on the radio shows like this. People would have loved it. It's not a well, you know, it's more of a muzzle that we needed. That's what it really needed. You know, the only guy that was safe, that's Sandy Beach's face you see over there. Oh, look at that beautiful face. Mr. Clean.
Hello there.
I forgot my mask. I forgot.
Oh,
wait a minute. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Danny Neaverth, wait a minute, that's your underwear. This is a G-rated show. The only guy who was really ahead of his time was the Unknown Comic. Remember?
Oh, very nice.
We do all these sight gags for radio. Nobody on radio ever hears what we do, and we never see what we're saying. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that it's Danny Neaverth's birthday, and I wanted to celebrate by having Danny on the air, and there's no better friend than Sandy Beach, because we're the only three personalities left alive. Everybody else has died. Where did they all go? Don't say rock and roll heaven. Sandy?
Well, did you know that I'm unemployed? So I'm hoping that this show will lead to bigger things for me, a possible job somewhere, you know?
Wait a minute. You were working 2.5 minutes a day. When you give up 2.5 minutes, that's not unemployment.
That's true. He had a 2.5-minute show. Isn't that right?
Yeah. He wanted to catch up with his sex life.
And, you know, Danny, we could reissue Rats in My Room and make all that big music money that we made before. We had a big hit record. Well,
now, Joey, you're standing in front of those beautiful palm trees and stuff, and you didn't even mention the wonderful decor that I've gone out of my way. I went out and bought these from the used flower store, and they're really nice. Look at the blooms. Look at this. You got all this stuff here. I'm just trying to, you know, I don't want to be the low man on the totem pole as far as beauty, okay?
Yeah.
You'll notice Joey is a lot more fashionably dressed than we are, Dan.
Yeah. I'm in Florida.
He's wearing a shirt from the Holly Loki collection. Very nice.
Is there any way that you could have your technician maybe powder Sandy's head? He's blinding me. His scalp is absolutely blinding me. I can't see.
Well, let me just set the stage here for a minute and tell you what's going on. Sandy Beach is one of the all-time great personalities who still actually has a show. But when he began, he was a disc jockey, and he was named in Hartford. I worked with him. He was named Sandy Beach. The other name they were going to give him, they were going to name him after the airport. They wanted to call him Bradley Field, I think it was, but he chose Sandy Beach. Isn't that right? Did you choose that or Charlie Parker?
No, Charlie Parker gave me a choice. I could either be, I could be named after the airport or Sandy Beach, and I chose Sandy Beach. I'm glad I did. I was going to change it coming up to KB, but Jeff K was promoting it before I got there, so I had to keep it.
Well, you know, here's something interesting about Sandy, though, that you're probably not aware of. He has a lovely daughter, but had he had a son, say, I have 4 sons. If he had a son, when you hear this, this is really great comedy. He would have a son. He would be a son of a beach. Get it?
Now you know why he's unemployed.
Now we know why the radio's
That's
dead.
on his sample reel of fabulous humor.
And that plant is right next to the NAB, where the death of radio is being celebrated. Are you still on the radio on regular WBEN? You still on the air?
Yeah,
that's a good station. Good station. Yeah. And it's one of the ones that's left over. What happened? Everybody's gone.
Yeah. We're owned by Entercom, and there's nothing like working for a huge conglomerate. I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I got to tell you something about Sandy Beach. Maybe you're probably not even aware of this. Years ago, we had a contest at WKBW for the president of KB Country. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Sandy Beach always admired you. You were like his idol. Okay. He always wanted you to be the guy. So you were on at night, and I had the advantage of being on in the afternoon at the time, and I became the president of KB country, all right? It was killing him. It absolutely killed him that you didn't win it because you are his idol.
Well, that's true. You know, Joey is a good idol to have. When I first got married, I always enjoyed Joey's show on 1520 on KB. We decided to come up and see if we could meet him, and we did. We came up and met him, and his show went until midnight, and about 10 o'clock, he says, "You guys hungry?" Said, "Yeah, sure." He called the Cloister, which was closed. It was one of the finest restaurants we had in Buffalo. Asked them if they could stay open. He brought us to the Cloister. They stayed open for Joey Reynolds. I'm thinking, this is a great job. I like it.
Well, the other part of it, let's tell the Sandy Beach story. You know, you were on the air every week reading the ugly brides. Their pictures were in the paper on a Saturday, I believe, right? Or on a Friday, and they were going to be married, or something like that. Anyway, you were looking at the pictures. What was it?
Yeah, the ugly bride contest, absolutely.
Yeah, you would actually read the names of brides who were getting married and call out the ugly one.
I never gave the names, but I used to put the pictures up in the studio. And we wanted to find out if the Buffalo News was really on top of their game. And Dan Neaverth Jr., his son, and Susan Hunt, who work with me, dressed me up as a bride. And we sent to the Buffalo News. We wrote a write-up of where I was going on my honeymoon. I was going to the Bahamas. And when I came back, I had a job at an ad agency. It was really quite nice, and I looked lovely in the gown, but they caught on, apparently, and never printed it.
Well, my niece was one of those ugly brides. So I owe you a son of a beach slap.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you know, it's great. You were very clever all the time. And, you know, you're always thinking of things to do because we did a lot of gimmicks and contests, and radio was fun. Now, what I wanted to talk about essentially today is that we don't have any new personalities. I mean, everybody's either a newsman or a field reporter. Nobody's learning how to be like we were, you know, just crazy. What happened? Where did we go wrong?
Well, the management found out that it cost more to maintain us, and we were a little high maintenance. We had to come into the shop for maintenance more often than the others. They decided to go the easy way, and that's what they're doing now.
Well, there's something, Joey, that you probably remember. We do a changeover every night. Yeah. Now, we were on a station that played rock and roll music, top 40, very, very popular station, one of the biggest in the country at the time. And you wouldn't think that they would allow us to do what we did. And we never rehearsed anything. You would come in at 7 o'clock when I'm signing off, and I'd stick around for 15 or 20 minutes, and we'd just talk. We're talking,
like we're doing now, like we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But you can't do that now. Oh, I want to bring up one other point. I was recently fired from my job. I lost my job. It's the first time I've been fired. But I have to ask you, Joey, in your career, in your many, many jobs, how many times have you been fired?
38 out of 40. Sandy got me a job at NBC in New York. Yeah. Do you know that? He was
your talent got you the job. I just got you the interview. Hey, look at Danny Neaverth. Your fame never ends. I'm going to hold this book up. It's called The Polish Cleaning Lady's Daughter. I don't know if you can see it. You remember the Polish cleaning lady was the one that came in and took the needle off the record while it was playing.
Well, let me tell you.
Should tell everybody we had engineers.
Yeah.
You remember the Polish cleaning ladies?
Of course I do.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
I do.
Here's a true story, and it was really, really embarrassing. The Polish cleaning lady was a lovely woman. She would come in, and she had no concept of what we were doing on the radio. She would actually, there was a time when she went into the control room and would remove the needle from the record to clean the surface. Well, the engineers would go crazy, all right? So she would come in, and we'd always kid around with her. So she had been missing for a couple of weeks. And I said, when she came in, I said, "Where have you been? You been away on vacation?" And she said, "No, my husband died." And I, oh my God. I mean, what do you say in a case like that? Because there's no comeback for that. There's no comedy surrounding that at all.
Comedy.
It was all, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry.
Here's a picture of Joey and Danny. This picture is in the Polish cleaning lady's daughter's book. There it is. I have to tell this story. And Danny liked to do a lot of outside appearances at KB. And I like to ride my horse and do stuff like that. So I didn't do a lot. I turned down a lot because I wanted to do other things. Whenever he would get a request for something he didn't want to do, he'd tell him to call me, and I'd have to weasel my way out of it, right? This one day he came up and said, did the minister from Eden call you? I said, no. He said, well, he's going to. Eddie Feiner, the King in His Court softball team, is going to play the church all-stars. And I told him you'd love to go down there and play with, on their team. I said, oh, thanks. A couple of days later, meanwhile, I'm trying to think, how can I get out of this when he calls? A couple of days later, the minister calls and said, Sandy, Eddie Feiner, the King in His Court, coming down. We're raising some money for the church. We'd like you to come down and be on our team. So I said, well, thank you for thinking of me, but I really can't. And he didn't give up easily. He said, I'll tell you what, you don't even have to play the whole game. Just come down and play a couple of innings. Now I'm thinking 1,000 miles an hour. How can I get out of this? I don't really want to do it. Neaverth got me again. And so he gets down to 1 inning. He says, you can come down here and play 1 inning. That way we can promote the fact that you're here and we'll raise more money. And I said to the minister, I'm sorry. I said, have you ever seen me in person? And he said, no. I said, I can't play softball because I have no right hand. Well, there was this absolute dead silence. And I said, did Danny never tell you to call me? He said, yes, he did. I said, he's always doing cruel things like that. That's my favorite, get even with Neaverth.
Well, you guys go on cruises together, right? Not these days, I hope.
Yeah. Not unless we're in the crew. Yeah, we do. We've been all around the world, if you pardon the expression, together, and had great times. We've seen most of the world.
Well, what have you done? Have you gone to China?
Yeah, I went there to pick up some virus on the way home.
Well, they have a
Joey, we had, do you remember Ted's hot dog stand down there at the Peace Bridge, right? Down at the Peace Bridge, right. So we were playing with the basketball team that the station had, the KB Yo-Yos. And we would travel all around and play various high schools. And we get back late at night, but we always went out and had something to eat before we go home. So we stopped at Ted's, and there's a big line of people, even very late at night. So when it came to be my turn, Sandy was in another line, and it came to be my turn. So I went up to and the guy said, what do you have, sir? And I said, for me, I would like to have two sausage, and so I'm carrying on like this, okay, like I can't speak English very well. And Sandy's getting really upset. He's standing in the line next to me. And why don't you finish the story, Sandy? Tell them.
Yeah, we just wanted to get home, get something to eat, get home, and he's doing all this shtick. And when he's pretending he can't speak English, the girl behind the counter is speaking slower and slower. I just want to eat and go. And I look at the other line, and the other line is not only looking at him because they feel sorry for him, they're looking at me because they think I'm the ugly American standing behind who's disgusted, right? So I decided to see how fast he can think, and I know he can think fast. I tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around. I slapped him hard across the face. I said, you're in America now, pal. Speak English. And he whirled around and said, 2 red hots and an order of fries.
Well, you know, when you have switched over to talk radio now with the serious talk show. I mean, you answer phones and actually get into politics. Why?
Oh, yeah.
Why? You're funny and you're fun. Why this change?
Well, we try and do, at the beginning of the show, they let me do a half-hour, kind of like a monologue. And then I try and keep to the lighter side, but it's been tough the last few years to stay to the lighter side. So I drift back and forth. It's not the most fun to do, I can tell you that. But when it's a good show, it's still a good show. But I miss the days of just you know, kick-ass rock and roll. Let's go for it. We just lost Little Richard. Remember the days you'd come in and play a Little Richard record and get started? And you played all the great tunes, every single one of them. I'd sit there listening to them. And the one thing, though, Joey has managed to accomplish something that very few people do. When he was at KB, one of the best stations in the country, covering the whole East Coast of America, I was at a 250-watt daytimer. And one day, Joey said how old he was on the air. And it caught my attention because we were the same age. And I thought, look it, I'm here. Joey Reynolds is there. Is there any hope for me? Okay. Years later, we're on the same staff. And suddenly, I gained 5 years. Joey got younger. It's amazing.
Well, I lied. I was good at it. I thought I was good at it. I guess I wasn't. I always got caught. Danny's wife always caught me. Marie, I almost became an in-law or an outlaw. You know, I was going out with Danny's sister. I mean, Marie, Danny's wife's sister. And she didn't want to, I mean, she's very bright and she didn't want to know from me.
You're talking about Crazy Ellie. Crazy Ellie was Marie's sister. Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little story about Joey. Joey, I think the only woman or person, maybe the only person in the world that Joey was afraid of was Marie. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Marie never took him seriously. She never trusted anything he said. All right. So Joey called me and he said, I'm going to be in a movie. And it's going to be on television. And I forget what it was, Gidget's mother or Gidget gets married or something.
It was a beach party movie, which is not very popular right now.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So anyway, he's telling us the story. Marie's listening on the other line. And she's shaking her head. No, he's not going to be in a movie. He's not going to be in a movie. Okay. I said, well, he can't lie. He said, how can he lie? Because he told us to watch the movie. So we watched this horrible movie, and Joey wasn't in it. So she said, you got to call him back. Call him back. So I called him back, and I said, Joey, we watched that movie. It was terrible, and you weren't in it. So Joey, always being a quick thinker, said, well, it was running long, and they cut my seeds.
Did I say that? Well, Marie said I was full of crap. That's what she said.
Yeah.
You know, I love Marie, though, because she always called me on everything. You know, you remember we made movies, you and I. We made records, we made movies. We tried to do everything that they were doing in Hollywood, but we did it in Buffalo. Bad move. You know, we weren't doing this right.
I love Marie, and used to do jokes about her all the time. One of my favorite ones was only a few years ago when I said that she used to sneak on the conjugal visit bus to Attica. And that she looked like her face was on fire and they put it out with an axe.
Oh, God.
But she was a doll. I just loved that woman. She was one of the best people ever, and never complained, at least not to me. She may have complained to Danny, but never to me. So she gave me a lot of material, and I'll never forget that.
Well, Danny was always very much ahead of me in every way, you know, because he was very good looking, very smart, very funny, very physical, and everything was always ahead. And then all of a sudden, when I got on KB, I was very popular at night, and Danny was on in the afternoon, and we made this record, Rats in My Room, and I started to become a big star with that record. You know, I mean, all of a sudden, everybody wanted my autograph.
Well,
and I was right there with Danny. I was right with you.
Who was the woman who recorded that originally?
I forgot her name, but there was someone that did that years ago. I just forgot. She was like one of obscure artists, you know, was out of the blue.
You heard it and played it on your show, and we discussed it, and I said, well, why don't we do our own version of it? And we did. Yeah, and we released it on Swan Records. I remember it said on the record, don't drop out. They didn't want kids to drop out of school. But anyway, I'm thinking, we're going to make a fortune on this record. Because at that time, there was a guy doing Greyhound commercials, and he looked like a bus driver. He wasn't an actor. All he did was he'd lean out the window and say, leave the driving to us. And I had read an article that he made $10,000 a year in residuals just for that. So I'm thinking, wow, we're going to make some big bucks. So we became BMI songwriters, and my first check arrived. The first check. I open up the envelope. There's $50 check from BMI. And I'm thinking, $50 every month for the rest of my life. This is beautiful. This is beautiful, right? So I can't wait for the next month. Go run out. There's the BMI envelope. I open it up, and inside there's a check for $30. And it said, until the account equals $50, we will not be sending you any more checks. I never received another check. So
that's like our government
$80.
right now.
Well, if you wanted to make more money with Joey, you guys had a chance to bring the Beatles to Buffalo just as they were breaking 1964, right around there, and turned it down.
Yes, we did. We did, because it would have cost a tremendous amount of money, $3,000 guarantee. Yes.
So we wound up with the Dave Clark 5. Remember?
Right. Exactly.
But we did good. You know, there was another thing that we did that was pretty cool. There was something else we did that was pretty cool. We had Dick Clark called, and he said that he had a tour, and it was in Toronto. The next stop was Erie, Pennsylvania. He said, so I got a night in, you can pick us up in Buffalo. And I called Danny and Tommy Shannon, who was on opposite us on the radio, and we had a recording studio together. So we were friends. And Sandy wasn't around yet. So we decided we're going to promote this concert with the Shirelles and the Chiffons and Gene Pitney, and there was a bunch of stars, and we're going to do Rats in My Room. So we're getting on the air promoting it on our station, and Dan and so was Tommy on WGR promoting it on his show. And we're in a hurry to get to the Peace Bridge to get to Canada, where the thing was being held 30 miles from Buffalo, and we couldn't get there because the traffic was so heavy going to Canada. And we were nervous and worried. When we got there, there were 10,000 people waiting to get in. It was our crowd. The cars from the Peace Bridge all the way to the Crystal Beach. That was our crowd. So we had the biggest crowd. But you know what? We didn't organize it right because the money was coming into the box office in cash. Remember, they were throwing it on the floor? We didn't know. We weren't out there with the money. And Danny and I are doing Rats in My Room, and I've got my mind on that box office. We could never make a fortune. I don't know why. What's the reason?
Yeah, we didn't make a fortune. And when we brought the Dave Clark 5 in, they had a contract that called for them to perform for half an hour. And they did a great show, and the place was packed with people, but they only did 18 minutes. So the next day, I called the manager in New York City, and I said, hey, these guys were supposed to do half an hour. They only did 18 minutes. And he said to me, did anybody ask for their money back? And I said, no. He said, what do you care? What do you care? But the other thing that was interesting, we had to hire a spotlight guy, and we had to hire 2 of them, all right?
Yeah.
So, and there were a lot of extraneous charges and things that were hard to keep track of, but the one that really got me was the spotlight guy. We needed 2 of them. I said, why do we need 2 spotlight guys? Okay. So while the concert was going on, I looked up way up in the rafters at the auditorium, and I saw one spotlight guy working 2 spotlights. He ran from one to the other, but we paid for 2 guys and got 1.
Well, do you remember when we were doing the Fun Affair, one of the acts, the Fun Affair was a bunch of acts. We brought in one after another, and we brought in Lee Michaels, who had a big song called Do You Know What I Mean? And he was supposed to do 3 shows. He was supposed to do 3 shows. And we had a stage manager whose job it was to get the band on the stage on time and get them off the stage on time because they had to switch some equipment and stuff around. And his manager was a typical New York guy. He had a little pinky ring on, you know, a dark-looking suit. And he came up to our stage manager and said, Lee's only going to do 2 numbers. And the stage manager said, no, he's here, we have a contract. He's got to do 3. He says, no, he's only going to do 2. And so our stage manager said, no, it's going to be 3. Now, the guy says to our stage manager, well, let me tell you something. Why don't we take this outside and settle it? What he didn't know is he was talking to the guy who was married to the head of the mob's daughter. And you know,
I know who that is too, Magadino.
And he says, Freddie said, "Hey, listen, around here we don't fight to see who wins; we fight to see who lives." And the guy, instant flop sweat, all because he, you know, when somebody says something like that, you know they're not to be trifled with. And Lee Michaels did 3 sets that night.
Well, the very same guy that Sandy's talking about, he actually worked security for Harvey and Corky. Now, I don't know I don't know what happened to Corky, but we all know what happened to Harvey. Yeah, okay. So anyway, we had Chuck Berry.
Wait, well, let's tell everybody that's Harvey Weinstein in case anybody didn't put that together. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, we had Chuck Berry coming in, and he had been quiet for quite a few years, and then he had the song "My Ding-a-Ling," okay, which then hit the charts, and everybody talked about it. So he had signed a contract to play Memorial Auditorium for Harvey and Corky for $20,000, and I had read in Billboard about a week before he came in that he had held up somebody in another city where he demanded more money than the contract called for. So I kind of warned them ahead of time. And at halftime, during the intermission, this person that Sandy was just talking about, who had connections, okay, he came out and there was smoke coming out of his ears, okay? He said, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him." I said, what's the matter? He said, he wants more money. He said he's not going to go on unless he gets more money, okay? So it ended up where they actually did pay him more money. But Chuck Berry, it was kind of his way of getting back at being cheated for so many years by so many promoters, okay? So whenever he had a chance to get back, he did it. And he would never tell anybody where he was staying. He came into town with just his guitar and a little tiny amplifier and his briefcase where you'd put the cash money to pay him, and then he'd just disappear after the show. Never
slept
told
in the car. Slept in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, never came to a rehearsal. There was no rehearsal. So all his backup musicians were local guys who were good musicians, but he'd be singing a song and he'd turn around and he'd go, hey, B flat, C. He was doing a live rehearsal.
Well, Danny and I both went to Bishop Timon High School, and the very first record hop they ever had, they decided to have a live performance. Do you remember? It was Jerry Lee Lewis. He came in and he sang, and the girls would come over from Mount Mercy because it was an all-boys school. And on Friday, we could have the dances with the girls because we were tired of dancing with each other all week. So on Friday, we got the girls and the boys are there. The priests are having a good time, and Jerry Lee Lewis starts to pound on the piano with his ass, because that's what he does, and he moves along across the stage. And I think at that time, he was going to have a 13-year-old wife or something. I don't know. There's scandal all over the place, and we were told we were never going to have another record hop, but I think we did.
Well, Tommy Shannon, I think, dated every woman in Western New York at one point. Because Tommy was the guy, he was the guy with the long blonde hair, drove a Corvette, was on the radio, good-looking guy.
And bilingual. He spoke Spanish. Yeah, you got to know. Yeah.
When I was in Milwaukee, Pabst Brewing, we did a lot of promotional stuff with them because we're an oldies station. And they said at a Music Fest, which is a huge festival in Milwaukee, would you like to go on stage and sing with the Temptations? I said, the Temptations? Well, this would be great. Sure. I said, yeah, they'll call you up and you pick a song you want, let them know ahead of time. And I said, well, I'd want to do My Girl, of course, because I love the song. This will be great. I'm going to go there. They're going to call me in. And I've sung with local bands before. And it's not hard because if you don't stand out, your voice just kind of blends in, right? So now I'm on stage, and I go backstage, first of all, and they're wearing a gold suit, a red suit, really cool stuff. It's stuff you just dream about. So now we go on stage, and I figure I'm just going to blend in. Should be no problem at all, right? Well, that isn't quite how they do it. You know how they have great moves, don't you? Well, they go boom, 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 boom. And then as it starts, they go chugging around like this, and then all five of them point to me. I'm supposed to sing by myself. Well, I faked it, of course, a little bit later, but I was really sweating it. Then they do a dance move. And they point to me. Now, I can barely walk, let alone dance. And I'm standing here among these legends, and I fake my way out of it again. But it was great. You get up on stage. You can't be afraid to flop. Have you guys ever sung on stage with any great groups or anything like that?
Oh,
No.
yeah.
Hey, you know, with all of these, with all of the tribute groups that are around right now, I thought this was quite interesting. I did a New Year's Eve show at one of the local casinos, and they had Bill Haley and the Comets as one of the acts. Bill Haley and the Comets. So I'm thinking, you know, yeah, because Bill
This
Haley
was before he
for
died,
a long, long
Joey.
time. Yeah, so I'm thinking, how are they going to pull this off, right? So I get there, and all of the musicians are like 25, 30 years old, okay? So none of them could have been with Bill Haley and the Comets. So I'm talking to their manager, and I said, are any of these guys from the original group? And he said, oh, no, they're not. I said, well, how can you call them Bill Haley and the Comets? He says, because I own the name. I said, what do you mean you own the name? He said, I bought it from their estate. So this guy, who's not even a musician, he's a manager. He owns the name Bill Haley and the Comets, and he can put them on anywhere he wants to.
Well, they were advertising a Hermans Hermits concert in Buffalo. Actually, it was up at the casino. And I was talking to somebody, and they said, do you know which group it'll be? What do you mean, which group? One of them has Peter Noon in it, who's sang lead on all of it. The other one doesn't have anybody you ever heard of, but they own the name, just like you said. And it was the Peter Noon group, so at least we got the right one.
Well, speaking of names, I had Danny Neaverth with, I was doing stand-up with Les Paul every Monday night at the Iridium in New York. And Danny came to New York, and I asked him to come and do some stand-up. Of course, you know, we were not welcome to sing Rats in My Room, which is our great big hit. But Danny got up there, and did you like Les Paul? Wasn't he wonderful?
I got to tell you, I was very much impressed. When you worked in New York, you worked there at several stations, and you really stayed at each station for quite a while. But when you were at WNBC, I'm thinking, now here's Joey. He's had every great job in America. And how long is he going to last at WNBC? So I go there, and they take me up, and you were part of the tour. When they were bringing the people around to see NBC, they would point at them. This is Joey Reynolds, and he's doing a show on WNBC. And now, just name some of the people that were on your show. You had like 5 different people that were all big names.
Well, Yoko Ono, let's start with her, because we had a relationship with Sid Bernstein, who was my friend. And Sid came to Buffalo. You know him. You met him. He brought the Beatles. So everybody, you know, everybody knew somebody. We all were into the culture of New York. And in New York City, since I had, actually, NBC was a good place. Then I did the WOR for 15 years, one job. I didn't get fired. I was absolutely 5 hours live on the air with no politics and no phone calls. So when you have 5-hour show and you have nobody but guests and you can't do monologues, you know, nobody's going to talk for 5 hours. You're lucky to do 10 minutes like Johnny Carson. That's the end of it. And then you have a few hours of getting to know everybody in town. So I interviewed everybody in New York twice. You know, I mean, they went around the second time. But
when you were doing the OR stuff, especially with Les Paul, I mean, that was great radio because you sounded like New York. I mean, it was fabulous. And every night, I've always been amazed by your ability to come up with fresh material. When I first started listening to you, you were on KB. The songs were only 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, and we had to do shtick after every single record. Nobody did that then. Nobody could do it now, no matter what. But it was great radio, and it was a very inviting time to get into it, because now it's kind of dry. It really is. There's not much going on out there.
Well, Dan Ingram was on ABC. He was on a big station, big New York station. And when he was done, excuse me, at 7 o'clock at night, he would get in the car and drive to Connecticut and listen to Danny and I to hear the changeover. He couldn't wait to get down to the car. He would have the news at 55. He said, I'd rush downstairs so I could hear you guys. I'd get 10 minutes of you maybe. He was excited because he loved the fact that we were just riffing. And, you know, that's what I want to bring up. why don't we have a training camp? We see the late night guys on television all come from stand-up these days. They don't have radio. They don't have that intercom. They don't have the association with the intimacy that we all desire and have on radio. You know, radio is a great intimate medium. But why do we not have anybody training? There's no training camp. So I called Dick Robinson, our mutual friend who has a Connecticut School of Broadcasting. He has a dozen schools or so. And I said, Dick, why don't you train young people and take them under your coat and put them in here? You have all these schools, and give them the platform so they could perform. And you'll get people who have personality and be crazy like we were, you know, and come out. And the only people who are young who are right now making it seems, are on newscasts. They're field reporters, they're weathermen, but we don't have anybody, and women, but we don't have anybody that's got like that verve that we all had. And of course, the whole business changed as a result of it.
Show you what kind of a business we have, though, if anybody's still thinking about getting into it. In Hartford, I'm sure you know as well as I do, Charlie Parker was the program director there, and he was really good at recognizing talent. And we had a midday guy on who was he was okay. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He was just like okay. And the owner of the station came in one day and heard him and didn't like him, and said, Charlie, get rid of him. Charlie says, no, he does a decent job. John Brody was his name. He said, no, I want him out. So he kept pounding and pounding. And finally, a few months later, Charlie had no choice. He had to let him go. Okay, just because the owner didn't like him. Okay, well, he comes in, he's packing his stuff up, and he's talking, and he says, great news, I just got a job in Philadelphia, WFIL. Get out, what a nice big market. Number 4 market, nice step forward, WFIL. What happened? He went to FIL, and about 6 months later, the same owner that owned our station bought FIL and fired him. So you get fired by the same guy.
Well, what do you think, Danny? Are there any young Danny Neaverths around? Anybody that could do what we were doing? Do you see any talent on the horizon?
Well, let me tell you a quick story about Marie. You mentioned her before, and she was a pretty tough person, and she was very, very hip to things. She did a flea market in Clarence, outside of Buffalo. And she decided she was going to take my youngest son, Dean. I think he was probably 9 years old at the time. And they're going to go out and do the flea market. So he was all excited about that. They got to the thruway where you pay the toll to get off to go to Clarence. And there was probably 20 cars lined up there. And there was only one person handling both lanes of the thruway, taking the tickets and giving the tickets and getting the money. So she was sitting there for about 15 minutes before she got up. And when she got up there, she said to the guy, I'm not going to pay the toll. And the guy said, lady, you have to pay the toll. She said, no, I'm not paying. He said, lady, it's only 15 cents. She said, I don't care. I'm not. She said, I took the time while I was waiting. You're wasting my time. I wrote down my phone number. I wrote down my license plate and everything. If you have to do something, go ahead and do it. The guy said, lady, you'll get arrested. 15 cents. It's 15 cents. He said, that's it. Okay. She drives away, goes out to Clarence, and about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later, she noticed a state trooper driving up and down Main Street checking the cars. Okay. So she sent my young son, Dean. She said, I think that policeman is looking for me. Go over and tell him that I'm over here. So he's all excited. Oh, my mom's going to get arrested. This is going to be great. Okay? So the trooper comes over and he said, ma'am, you didn't pay the toll. She said, yeah, I know. I get on the thruway. The only reason I take the thruway is to save time. And it wasted a lot of time. And I'm not paying the 15 cents. He said, lady, it's only 15 cents. Pay it. They sent me all the way from Rochester. She said, what? Yeah, I was on the thruway. They sent me from Rochester to handle this. Okay. She said, well, that does it. I'll never pay the toll. If you have to arrest me, he said, lady, please. So he starts to turn away. He says, okay. And he starts to walk away. And she said, and don't you put the 15 cents in and say that I paid it. So now, the next day, I tell the story on the radio. And I thought it was pretty cool. And people are calling me saying, oh, man, I wish I had the nerve to do something like that. That's really funny. That's really, and I'm getting all these calls, right? So I finished my show, and the program director called me in, and he said, "That's a call for you, Sandy." No, it isn't. So the program director called me in, and he said, "You know, I don't think you should have talked about that." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It just sounds very cheap." And I said, "It sounds very funny." Okay, and so anyway. That's what happened, and but he didn't understand that. He didn't understand why people would think that was interesting or funny. I thought it was great.
You probably still have the 15 cents, too.
Yeah. And I invested it wisely. Disney stock, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for putting a knife in my heart.
Now, Sandy, what you made this big shift over to this mental ranch called talk radio. And you're answering phones and answering situations and living through the virus. You're doing your show from home, like all of us, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And how is that going with you?
At first, I didn't really want to do it from home because I thought you'd lose some of it because I work with two guys and we give hand signals and all kinds of things. The quality of the audio is pretty decent, and so far so good. This is the beginning of the 8th week of broadcasting from home. So far, it's been, yeah.
I did broadcasting from home too for about 3 months, and then I got fired.
You know what we should do? You know what we should do? Take up a collection among the three of us and see if Buddy will sell WEC, and we'll buy it and do whatever we want to do with it. What do you think?
Is that a radio station in Buffalo? You should tell everybody because they're on the internet.
Yes, it's the Buffalo radio station where Danny was employed for 2.5 minutes. For 2.5 minutes.
Oh no! On this other piece of business here with the virus, are you believing that it came from an animal or a vegetable or a mineral? What are you thinking? Where did it come from? A lab? Are you into the conspiracy thing?
The coronavirus, the conspiracy? No, I don't think it's a conspiracy thing. But I remember when it all started. I'm thinking, a lot of people die from the flu every year. And it just seemed like it was kind of an exaggeration. But when you saw that it was happening around the entire world and the results of it, it's a scary thing. It really is. And I hope that the opening of a lot of these states, I just hope it goes well. And I hope people are really, careful. Because just last week, I remember I was driving somewhere locally, and there's a hot dog stand that's open. And first of all, none of the people were keeping a 6-foot distance from one another, and maybe 15 people in line. None of them had masks on, and I think that's taking a chance, really, until we find out, what we can do about it.
For those of you who are enjoying the show, Danny knows and I know, but you may not know. This is typical. Here we are. We're showering Joey with praise, great praise. One of the best all-time personalities. We couldn't be nicer to him. What does he throw to us? Hey, what do you think of that coronavirus deal?
No, I was looking for a perspective. Come on. Oh, you're great. All right, you guys. I'd like to go on the next cruise, but I don't think I'd ever want to be on a cruise with you. This is as scary as the Bills being in the Super Bowl.
I hope you come with us because you'd make a good hostage in case we go to any foreign countries.
Oh, thank you. So, Danny, it's been fun celebrating your birthday without ever mentioning it once. Are you going to take him out?
Yes, thank you. If you could both sing "Happy Birthday" to me, I would really. Okay. Enjoy it.
All right, you ready, Joey?
Yeah, let's go.
Happy
wait. No. Get the mask on.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Danny.
This is miserable.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
Thank you. How many years is this now?
A long time. I'm trying to think. 47 or 48. Something
Well,
along
I'm the one that's a lot younger.
Yeah, you're not far behind. One of you. You're catching up to me.
His son,
Sandy
Dan
Beach.
Jr., got him a fire permit so he could put the candles on the cake.
Sandy Beach and Danny Neaverth. Let a smile be your umbrella, but don't get a mouthful of rain, you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye.